Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. My name is Wango Joy. This is Conversations and Plugs, where African business stories come to life.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cliff, and welcome to Conversations and Plugs. And one of the things we've been talking about with Wago has been, guys, subscribe, right? We don't want you guys to miss any more of this content because we realize a lot of guys just come watch and then just leave. So subscribe. It helps us grow our channel and also bring you more of this content. So please, down there, just subscribe. So today we have a very interesting guest, and I'll let her introduce herself. But we're going to be diving deep into things like education. Um, are we going to be doing gentrification? No, not gentrification today. We're going to be doing concrete jungles,
Yeah.
education, and
Early childhood development.
childhood development, and making a business of it all. Zayne, greetings.
Karibu.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. No, introduce yourself.
Okay, so I always struggle with that question
I know,
because
right?
someone said, how do you say who you are without saying what you do? Which for me is like a very integral part. No, it's like my whole
So
personality.
identity.
Yes, at this point. But I'm Zayne and I am so many things. I'm a wife, auntie, mother
auntie,
of two
friend.
amazing kids. And I'm also obsessed with the miracle that is childhood and how we come from not being able to hold our heads to who we are now. So a lot of my life revolves around my children and other kids and understanding child development and how to create spaces where they can thrive.
And what does that look like? And where did that start?
So
What is this thing that you've built?
Yeah, okay. So I am the founder and chief noisemaker at Play Academy.
Play Academy.
I'm just a big child, by the way. Growing old, I don't have a choice, but growing up, I'm still deciding. Yeah. So I'm at Play Academy, and what we do there, or the whole objective is like to create opportunities or an environment where children and African families, in specific African children and their families, can thrive, especially the first 5 years. Because when I had my son and did a bunch of research, as all of us did when we have our kids, I found out that those first 5 years are so critical in terms of nutrition, in terms of like education and input and how kids learn so much around play. So it was really insane to me that we thought they are just playing and the learning starts when they start school. And I didn't find that we had a lot of content that was around the African context. Everything I was finding was which was Amaju.
Yeah.
And it didn't really apply to us. So I started sharing a bunch of stuff that we were doing with my kids, what I was learning, how I was engaging him at home. My motherhood has evolved quite significantly since then. And then I just realized from the conversations I was having on my personal page that a lot of people felt this way, the overwhelm, especially of learning just how important those first 5 years were, that a community was necessary. So that's where Play Academy started. And since then, we have like children's programs, we have caregiver programs. So we rope in anyone who's in touch with kids. So everything from like in education, so educators, teachers, people in medical staffing, nannies and other caregivers, grandparents. We try and create just this village around them. And we do play dates for kids. We have our play pod where kids come to play 6 months to 4 years. They come and have opportunities to play there. And the whole idea is those caregivers who come with them, these are things that translate at home. So we just want to equip, we want to empower, we want to create meaningful social interactions. We want to support caregivers in any way possible. And all our spaces are inclusive. We do workshops, we do trainings, we do play dates for grown-ups too, because play doesn't have a cutoff. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And I find it really interesting because when caregivers or even parents come to our space or our events, they have this perception that I'm just gonna like hang around as my child plays. And let's say someone comes to our play pod and the child is occupied. I'd be like, would you like to paint or Play-Doh? And their immediate thing is like, oh, no, of me. No. Because for them, and I think I've kind of understood why we are like that. Play needs you to tap into like a degree of vulnerability.
Yes,
you need to be just not busy. Like it removes you from this necessity to feel like you're achieving something constantly. So it feels like it's wasting time. You need to be very vulnerable
Productive.
to express yourself. You need to be able to be silly. And for adults, we've really forgotten how to do that. But it's something that mentally is really helpful. Even now in boardrooms, people are putting Legos and the actual programs around play to engage teams.
We forgot play.
Because it's like that important. So after a while, you usually see them, the child is gone. They've built an entire like Play-Doh village and a house. The child is coming, no, don't touch that. This is it's always a bumpy start, but it gets there. So Play Academy is just, we are doing these pods, which are community hubs, to support these caregivers. And we have an online platform where we stay in touch and we offer any support to those who need it. And we make sure that it is always within the context of where we are. So research driven, that's where we're getting our insights, but contextualized for African audiences. Yeah.
Contextualized for African businesses.
Yes.
So what ecosystem have you built around Play Academy? Because I mean, I was just doing, I think I've interacted with you and I've gone, and I think I've attended some, I've actually attended one of your play pods. Pretty cool in terms of what the kids get to do. And I was also going through your page, and something caught me where you're saying you're actually building communities.
That's my main goal.
And it's a community-driven early learning hub for little ones and their big people. That is so cool.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So we want to create different touch points at any stage that this parent is in their life. And ultimately, because someone was asking me, so your initial focus is this first 6 years, because I feel like that's where the biggest gap is. Everyone is focusing on creating opportunities for kids already in elementary or in primary school, forgetting that this is where they form their identity. This is where they form how they deal with frustrations, their social-emotional development, everything. So someone was asking me, what happens after my child hits 6? So now we are just blind. We won't be part of this community. But the idea is that by that point, the parent is empowered. We don't want to own the idea of Play Academy and what it's trying to achieve, that they become advocates for their kids in every space that they're in school, in your neighborhoods, within your communities. You should be able to do that. The goal ultimately is like these community hubs that we create, we should be able to guide others to do the same within their spaces. So the ecosystem we've created is, there are certain things that we find are critical for the kids at this age, and then we make sure we have programs that touch on all these things. And then any areas that we find are maybe problematic, or people we've noticed like a lot of parents struggle through, creating frameworks around that. So whether it's hosting, making sure that, let's say around play, because that has been a huge focus, making sure we have the play pod where they get like a clear demonstration of what play can do with your child when they have free play, where you don't have the pressure. A lot of parents now are nutritionist, chauffeur, blah, blah. And now you're telling me, I'm also a teacher, I have to plan activities at home for my child. But this is like a clear proof that you have to just trust the child knows how to play. You are not the expert. They are the expert. You just need to create an environment for that. And then we follow it up with a workshop on play, where there's one in Kiswahili speaking directly to the nannies and caregivers, and one that's in English. How we create communities is, say, for our play pod, when you drop your child, you're not dropping them to a play group to play. When you drop your child there and they become a member, one, you join our WhatsApp group as a parent, where you're kept updated. This is what we've noticed, this is what they're into. Even just sharing funny stuff of things they do. Like yesterday, one of them was crying for money, and I was like, my God, how? She was like, money. Anyway, so you have this community in that aspect. And then we have our monthly social where parents gather together. And then we want them, they actually have a say on the direction of this play pod. I don't like how this is going. Or maybe we need a bigger sandwich. Or can we have a workshop on such and such things? Or can we create a policy around being more inclusive? And so within these barazas that we host, that is where we make them part and parcel, because our idea is it should be sold enough on the vision that it is something that spreads.
Correct.
It should be infectious.
Yeah.
So and then we have like our online community where we make sure we stay updated and create opportunities for us to actually meet in person. And what I've found is, especially moms, you can be shy, but the minute someone shares their personal experience in motherhood, I've been in situations where they're, hi, how are you? I came back 30 minutes later and it's like, what family planning are you? What is that? And for dads, for us, something like that, one of our goals is creating more spaces for fathers as well. Because what we learned is, even though we are seeing parents for a lot of these things, moms are the primary caregivers. Moms are the ones making sure the child. Dads come to the playpod, they even have no idea what we are doing. They were told to drop them off at 9 a.m. But what we want to do is also engage this audience. So we have like a daddy day. We look at where the need is and then create opportunities for them to be part of the community. Yeah.
It feels that in your inclusion, it feels like you're living with open hands. And every piece of information you get is you're very quick to share it with everybody. It feels like you're creating the African village that our new structures kind of destroyed. And I was looking at some of the things that are so important because they're age brackets. So you talked about like 0 to 6, yeah? So conception to age 2 is the first 1,000 days. And a child's brain forms neural connections at a pace of at least 1,000 per second. And then when it goes up to 3 to 5, that's when they learn language, social, emotional, and cognitive skills. And then 6 to 8 is when the play-based learning continues, but the foundation has already been set.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding, especially because I'm now very deep in your community as a mama of 3-year-olds, is that the information is there. It just hasn't been structured in a way that I'm able to digest it and implement it very quickly. Also because children's milestones shift very quickly. And so what I really like about what you're doing is that you're bringing the entire community along the journey of this child's life. And you're saying, everyone, let's come together, let's build the foundation. And after we build the foundation, the child has a very strong foundation. I wonder though, what are some of the distractions that you're seeing that are causing adult parents, all parents are adults. Okay, me, I'm an inner child. My inner child. What distractions are you kind of seeing that kind of stop a lot of children from thriving fully? Because I do feel like with the African context that has shifted over time, we're finding that the child markers, all the 1,000 things per second still remain true. But how, I'm trying to get the right question. How are we missing the point? Are there things how are parents missing this thing? And why was it so easy for you to kind of pick this up and move with it? Because you saw a problem, you addressed it with a solution, and that solution has now helped so many parents. What are the barriers and distractions?
I think I was able to pick it up because my background with the kind of childhood I had an awesome childhood. Really, I thought that's how childhood is for everybody in my head. And then when I became an adult and looked at other kids, to be seen, not to be heard, and all these things that are quite limiting for them, I learned as a grown-up. So for me to see that and turn a blind eye is something I can't do. And two, I was seeking a community for myself. I didn't know what I was doing. It was isolating. You're just like gradually realizing you've created this bubble around yourself. And I desperately needed to be able to connect with other people. So it was this platform and creating this space was healing for me, because I didn't start it as a public it was on my
Instagram.
my Instagram
Playroom
page.
KE.
No one
Yes.
asked it.
That's
No,
what
Zayne. Yeah, so I had a
it was Zayne first
yeah,
and
yeah,
Playroom
and
KE.
it was friends who were like, no, just open a page, or I've sent my cousin to your page. Can you accept her request? I was telling her about this thing that you are doing. That's how I ended up setting up Playroom. But what I think is missing, one, I genuinely don't think it's a parents alone thing. These kids are raised in, you don't keep them in your house. You're not responsible for everything per se. The environment we create around them, they have to be the priority from the beginning. But right now we are seeing, even if like policy has been created or funding has been put for them to be built for classrooms, miraculously, if that were to happen, and the classrooms are actually built properly, do they have adequate nutrition? Because all these things, play and all this stuff that we want to enhance their child development, cannot work if the parents don't feel supported, if they don't understand to begin with. If you're giving birth to your child and there are no vaccines, they have to be healthy and alive for all these things to matter. So I feel like systems in a way have also failed parents and the kids in general. But parents are currently, the information age has been fantastic, but it has also been quite overwhelming, which is why even on my page, the more I've interacted with parents, the more I'm very conscious not to add to that mental load, not to make play an extra thing that you have to do. Or child development, I cannot implement it unless I understand fine motor skills, play schemas. Are they in the connection schema? Are they in the... Play is the most basic, simplest thing that mammals do, and that is all animals. They are born knowing how to do it. My goal is just to let this parent know you're very capable. You actually do not need all these nitty-gritties. We were playing Chamama Chababa outside and lighting fires. How was that possible? Like someone brings a matchbox and lights, and mtu amechukua tomatoes somewhere, and I'm like, these days it's like, you're playing with fire. Remember, only adults can do that. Anyway, but I think they're also overwhelmed with the amount of things they have to track to just raise a child, and you're unlearning so much of how you've been raised that it's easy to miss it. It's easy to kick into survival mode when you're trying to literally do everything else. So it's just to try and guide. And I found a really important way is to make sure that they don't feel, or we don't feel like you're the only one who is not doing this thing. You're the only one who, oh, you're still beating your child. I mean, you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, that's where we are. There's a lot of unlearning to do. Here are steps you can take, and to acknowledge that it's a work in progress always. Yeah.
There's a crazy statistic I came across, and I think Wago has done or worked on some of these problems developmentally. Like, for example, stunting rates. I was reading a UNICEF report where approximately 26% of children under 5 in Kenya are stunted due to chronic malnutrition. Which affects cognitive development and learning capacity. So it's a real thing. So where are we going wrong? And fine, we'll come and talk about policy where we are not building enough playgrounds. We are actually, as a country, Kenya, for example, a lot of development does not factor in terms of people actually have children and children need to play. Community is lost. We are actually becoming less social. Like half of us or 95% of us have never gone to a neighbor. And I remember growing up, when we moved into our neighborhood, I do remember that one of our neighbors back in the day came with food.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Good to see you guys. Are you guys okay? We just thought we'd come break bread with you guys. And I'm like, what happened? Where did that go to? And now we are getting kids, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do with these kids? Where we're growing up or where we are living currently, it's a concrete jungle.
Yeah, they're not even meeting others to play outside.
Exactly.
Also, security. You can't. We were riding our bikes to the next neighborhood.
Correct.
Or playing
now I
shake on
can't
the
even
road.
exactly. Now I can't even imagine my kids leaving the compound.
It's wild.
Immediately, no.
It's become less. I mean, I don't even know. Yeah, so I don't know. And I'm loving what you're doing in terms of trying to address these things, which is weird. We're going back to community.
Yeah, and for me, that is it. Like, how are there malnourished kids? It actually doesn't matter anything else you do, because this is their brains are actually still developing. They are growing. If they don't have the right nutrients, if they are feeling unsafe, like stress is actually something that interferes with their development. If a child is stressed, the body kicks into just the basics and function and not giving them room to explore and to grow. Their response becomes limited. So I just feel like we are focusing on all the all the wrong things, and forgetting that all these other really basic stuff matters. And these first 1,000 days, or even when I was saying them building schools, you're building schools and then that kid doesn't have food, or then you start a nutrition program to show that you have it and it's githeri daily, as if that is the complete balanced diet. I think we need to align and relook at how we are working in that space.
I just want to follow onto that, because us sitting here, we're very privileged, right? In terms of where our children go and what we are able to provide.
Yeah.
And I was reading your bit around how you are really inclusive. So what are you doing? Are you doing anything for, especially socioeconomically, guys who aren't able to feed their kids? And I'm assuming it's rather stark that 26% will probably be the less of us in society economically as well.
Yeah. So entrepreneurship
and passion enters entrepreneurship and passion.
As said is my husband anyway, as he always says and reminds me, you cannot eat passion. It's actually not possible. If I'm like, oh, I want to do this, there's even a time he tried to operationalize me, and I was like, you actually do not have enough money to keep doing this for free. You can't. You cannot. I'm like, we can if we do this, if we get volunteers, if we do that. But that reality is, you do need resources to be able to reach those ones. And that is my goal. My goal is ultimately creating opportunities for kids to access, all kids to be able to access these things. Right now, at my capacity, what do? I do projects at the library where we changed it up to make it more friendly for kids, because it was just like books on the shelves. Now we created a program where they have a few toys, some puzzles, forward-facing shelves, because we know that's really important for that age group. Things like that, the free bookish play dates, making sure that we train nannies on like first aid training and whatnot. But it's a drop in the ocean, especially because of where we are located, or the fact that we operate online for the most part. We are definitely not reaching everyone we need to reach. We are trying to create opportunities with the podcast and create free story time so that they can be accessed anywhere by other kids. So the book nook that is the purpose. We've done some work with the AU to edit a book. And
that is so cool. With the who? The AU?
The African Union.
The African Union.
So basically it was a book to teach the rights of the girl child and things like that. So any projects I can participate in that take us further, sure thing. But we are not even scratching the surface at the moment. And now it's trying to determine how to go from here to being able to do that. And I find like the minute you're an entrepreneur, especially accidentally, you're looking at tomorrow. There's this survival thing that kicks in, but that is the big picture, that ultimately we are able to do things for the groups that really need it.
And there's so many groups that need it.
A lot of people actually doing fantastic things already in that space, like Kidogo Aliyahs. They're doing amazing training and creating opportunities in like low-income areas.
It's so interesting. When Cliff, you said the 26%, if a child is not developed by age 6, that's it. There's a certain level, like that means 30%.
There's a lot to recover.
30% of the workforce can't be fully leveraged because they just don't have, their brains didn't work. They didn't get the nutrition that they needed to get, which is so crazy.
Yeah.
I remember just working on a project for early childhood and development, because what we were realizing was policymakers were very focused on primary education, but primary education starts at age 6. And some of the people who were talking with at UNICEF were saying 0 to 6 makes more sense to focus on, because if the foundation is not right, then nothing will be right, you know? And some of the things that there's work being done, for example, in border towns, because you can't cross over a border with a child. And a lot of around borders, there's a lot of trade that happens across the border. And so things like how do you get daycare access to that level of that level of the bottom of the pyramid? Or for example, in markets have a lot of food that's food waste. But if you develop, let's say, a daycare center around a market, then the produce that is not used in the market can be used to feed the children. And so what I find very interesting around childcare is that some of these interventions are so easy, but there's such a need, because where there's no information, the people will fail.
That's what, yeah. Because even for me, I keep thinking there is no parent who doesn't want the absolute best for their child.
Correct.
Sometimes it's the information that's missing.
Yeah.
Like even with the play ideas and whatnot, I do on the page. Specifically, I make sure that they're accessible. You're using toilet rolls, you're using, and it's like today I shared minimum effort. Like the littlest, simplest thing you can do. You can just put water and put your child there, and you're doing so much for them. And also realizing that there's already so much that you already do, and it's giving you information to make you realize, actually, using this voice when you're talking to your child is you making neural connections. You are doing so much to encourage you to keep doing it. But yes, I do believe there's a huge information gap. Even when it comes to, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is adequate representation for kids in the stories they read, the stories they hear, the
adequate representation.
Yes.
Identity.
I need kids to be able, I need my kids reading books, and that's even why we have book subscription. We have Book Nook, which sells pre-loved books. We have the free stories online, because you need to be able to see yourselves in that story, and you will see it connect with that child.
Yes,
There's one
does.
other playpod who was reading something and then realized the kid in the story had matutas, and they don't say it. They don't say, oh, I feel so seen. But what she did was hold her hair like this. You can only be what you see. You can only
be what you read.
What you hear. It's possible for you to be, you're reading stories about, and we are not knocking the Sungura and Nini stories, but where we fell was a lot of our stories traditionally are oral, are told that way.
Orally,
so we are missing on the shelves, and that is slowly shifting. So for me, it was really important to initially, in fact, what started all of this is I ran into a book in the bookshop that was written by someone from the global north about Kenya, and it had and it was read as an actual text in elementary schools, and it obviously featured the barefoot boy with the flies just trying to get food. And the lesson there, I went online, and the lesson plans that were being used by teachers was to teach kids how to be grateful for what they have, because this is a situation that's happening there. Like you are this lesson, you know. And I said, how can this be sold here on our shelves?
Are you about to get us to just jump out of this?
I mean, my child can't even relate.
Where do we stand here?
Can't relate to that at all. You are forming that thinking in his mind.
Yes.
So for me, I found that parents, so we did a lot of like education, because after that I went loud, I was angry, I was posting online, I'm like, how can this be here? Then I realized a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, yeah, but why should we? Or when you frame the Snow Whites and all these things and the impact
Snow
they
Whites
had.
and princesses.
And the rescuing and the person climbing through your window and kissing you in the mouth without consent. All these things.
And happily ever after.
Yeah, but we have amazing stories. And I want my child to see the village life. I want him to see astronaut. I want him to learn stories.
Yeah.
And parents were like, oh, okay. Oh, I see what you're not. And right after that, we've had a bit of a movement where people are actually prioritizing this stuff. We are now bookshops also stocking them.
I've seen that as well.
So information, I do agree, is a big part of it. Yeah.
And even Wago here has written some children's books as well.
I have.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Hopefully she can come read on our podcast.
And I have a story the other day, and it happened so interestingly. I think we had gone for lunch, and the kids wanted to paint, and they painted.
Yeah.
And when they came,
guys,
they painted a princess who's blonde.
Yeah.
No, then I went and asked the guy, like, why is a princess blonde and this color? We don't have any other options. The guy moves into his phone and then shows me what he has. And I was like, my guy.
Default setting.
My guy, like, okay, I get it. But next time I'll pay more attention in terms of, because the kids will grow up assuming that only princesses are meant to be this color. And I think that is where, from an education perspective, we need to start paying attention and caring what our kids are consuming, what our kids are doing as well.
Yep. And that the kind of like, even when did I see who was apologizing? What are they called? The guys who publish our textbooks.
KIE.
Yeah, I saw them apologizing for a text that blamed the girls for being raped.
Yes.
Should it be enough that you apologized?
No, it's not. No.
But like, what systems do we have to make sure that doesn't happen? Who is doing the checking for publishers and for putting the retailers? Why are we not taking so much more responsibility around it? And absolutely, I'm sure that guy painting the blonde princess with the fair hair.
Show me. Look, they're the ones who chose. And I'm like, my guy.
His perception in his mind, that is a princess.
Absolutely.
He actually probably can't conceptualize another version that exists. But I think a lot of it is changing. Even in just the last 5 years, I can tell you my trips to the bookshops then and now, so much has changed. And there's like general movement towards being more inclusive. We're not 100% there because also of our language and how we talk to the kids. But we need to like speed it up.
Accelerate. And I'm loving in terms of the gap that you're feeling. And for me, this is me just trying to make sense of what you're trying to build. Number one, the problem you've identified is around education.
Yeah.
Right? And it's when I look at how we process, whether it's how we build businesses, you started with which is interesting. You started with Zayne on Instagram, transition to Playroom KE.
Yeah.
And I was looking like you have 35,000 followers.
Yeah.
Then you decide, okay, cool. Playroom KE is not enough. Let me pick Playroom KE because you do some really cool stuff. By the way, I started following Zayne because of Joy. Joy's just like, look at this chick. And then eventually we met up.
Yeah,
I think everyone knew
for me.
And then moved that to Playroom KE into actual Playroom Academy.
Yeah.
Right? And you're building all these pods, which I find fantastic. And I agree with Said, as he's been trying to operationalize you and turning you into a business. Yeah, I can see that it must be a business at some point for it to be sustainable and to impact more people. Right? And then
Said is here, by the way.
Said is here. I'm just seeing him wave. And then after that, I absolutely love what you're doing on with the Book Nook, which is, I hear a lot of African stories told by Africans, narrated by Africans, by African kids. So I'm loving the ecosystem that you're building. I don't know if you're seeing that.
I'm seeing it as we go, for sure.
As you go.
Yeah.
And sometimes just build it as you go. And it's an amazing field. Like, so what do you see forward? How are you going to monetize all these things?
Yeah.
How is your entrepreneurial spirit kicking in?
What entrepreneurship shows you?
Yeah, it definitely chose me. I was notorious for saying, I am not an entrepreneur and I have no desire to
You're
be.
A social
I operate in a system. I need to be able to check out of work. But the passion and the not seeing I think I'm a problem solver. Maybe that's what it is, because even on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes it's not the best thing to be the fixer. You have a problem, let me fix it for you. Sometimes I just want you to listen. But anyway, I think that's how I landed into entrepreneurship, because no one was doing it. I felt the urgency because I'm watching my child grow. And then I saw just this huge gap. When I started, I did not know monetizing wasn't even a thing I was thinking, because I had a full-time job and doing all these things. And then in COVID, when I was able to do a lot of this type of work, is when I realized, I actually do enjoy this. It doesn't feel so taxing. I feel challenged, because I think also my thing is getting bored, which I'm starting to grow out of, because you can't like chase the next thing always. You have to see something through. So in terms of growth, until now, it's what I'm saying. I see a problem, and then I do something around it to solve it. And sometimes it's a workshop, sometimes an entire program, sometimes it is an excursion. But because of the opportunities that come back, they've been the guide. The vision is so clear in my head, and I have written it down, that I'm able to identify what opportunity actually fits into that roadmap. But I still think maybe the next step is to get more structured in what we do, because we are very clear on what ticks the right boxes for us. So getting more structured, and then figuring out a more sustainable way to monetize. So right now, the thing that drives a lot of the activities we do is the Playpod. That's our bread and butter. We have several families that come there and that are members, and that is able to sustain all the other programs we do. Beyond that, for a lot of the projects we do, looking at grants and other ways that we can invest back in it, is definitely something I'm considering. Do I know the how?
No.
At the moment, I don't, but I just know every day I just take a step towards that. Yeah.
Here at CNP, we like to say, I just built the ark and the animals came. And what I feel is that you're creating spaces for families to bloom into better. What I love is that you always have a target market, because
the babies will never. Kwanza, Africa has the youngest population in the world.
You're good. You have enough.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that community is what has actually kept us going, because for me, one thing that always was like, is it limiting us or restricting our growth, is that for the kids and the families will always come first in what we do. Our code of ethics was the first thing that we wrote down. And because if you don't stand for anything, you can fall for everything.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot of partnerships and collaborations and like sponsorships we've missed out on, because someone wanted to do something in the space that is just not feasible for the child's development. They can't be trying to play and your mascot is carrying a speaker, and I'm sorry, it's just, and you're trying to hand out juice to all kids, and knowing that parents are the ones who make that sort of decision. Literally, even, so I've had to say no to opportunities like that. And in the beginning, I'm like, am I even ever going to grow? Because you need the money. But I was very steadfast in that. But what I've learned is, because of that, there is a trust that's been built within the community, that every major opportunity that we have had has not come from outside. It has all been driven by someone in the community who bought into the vision.
Right.
Yeah, so
build it, they will come,
is what it's feeling like right now. Yeah. But I always feel like I need a plan, but I am I'm at my woo stage right now.
Yes, you're playing your way through it.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like you're making, but you
are.
Legit,
I am. And I'm learning so much as we go. I think all my years of schooling and any experience I gathered in the 13 years in my previous industry did not teach me as much as I've learned in the last 3 years, but it did factor in. It actually contributed. All those skills like that I built have actually worked out in this space, but having to learn on the go has been I've actually enjoyed it. I like the challenges that come with figuring it out, putting an entire event together with nothing, and being able to rally support around that. And thankfully, we've had pretty successful events. And then the people that you meet and you're suddenly in a space that challenges you. Like I was just telling you, I was mixing paint with kids, literally still covered in paint. And then I was having conversations about NGOs and policy. And I'm like, bruh, completely out of my depth.
Like
I don't even understand the language you're using right now. But I'll learn. I'm sure there's a course for that online. ChatGPT. Imagine I am. Yeah, but that's the part I've really enjoyed, and it has been overwhelming many times. But I don't think it's been overwhelming enough that I've wanted to stop. Yet I'm told it's a cycle that at some point, as an entrepreneur, you're like, you know what, LinkedIn jobs,
such.
Yeah. And enjoy it and keep building. Let's talk about your 13 years that you've talked about in terms of work. Where were you? How did you start?
I was working in different agencies around marketing. How I started is I'm actually a trained journalist. That's what I studied.
Okay.
And I left university, and the professor I had, or the lecturers we had, she was like, publish and be damned. You know that lecture hall you enter, and he's like, if you're here to make money, leave. Go and pick another major, because journalism is about changing the world. And I think I have that. Maybe it tracks, because what I pick is constantly driven by that, like creating impact.
Altruism.
Yes. So that really appealed to me, and I signed up for journalism, and then I went to actually work in journalism. And I think I was naive for the longest time. In fact, at this point, I still think I have some degree of naivety around it. And sometimes I talk to people and they're like, you're such a dreamer. And then Play Academy will have this thing that's not like an orphanage. It's going to be a community. And you just look like you're saying these things. And I think I had that perspective. And I went and worked. Within a month, I had seen all the sexual harassment that goes on. I had seen all the bribing. Actually, that was the first time I've ever been bribed. Unknowingly, that's how naive I was. I received an envelope. I thought it was press release, because in school we were told after a press conference, you're given, the press release to go. And then I went and opened. I'm like, oh my God, it's money. And I was in shock. And I was telling all these girls, oh my God, I got money. Yeah, kwani. And then I said, but did you fill your name? Because I was receiving the press release, put my full name, signed it off. Said, you filled your real name? Mekata ID number. Now I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, no.
Oh my God, I'm already corrupt.
Yes.
My career has ended before it's begun. My dad is about to see me being carried at the back of a Land Rover. Like, I somehow thought they're coming for me. The Kenya anti-corruption is coming specifically for me. And after that day when I received that money, and so the reaction, no one was actually shocked and, we have to uncover this. As I had read and watched in movies and learned in school, I just knew I have reached my end here, because this is a cancer, I felt, and I resigned that day. And I went and walked into an HR company, and I was just like, I'm starting from scratch. This is a training I have, but give me whatever job. And they had advertised for a receptionist at their spot, and I was like, I'll do reception, because I don't know what it is I'm going to do. And after talking for a bit, said, actually, our marketing agency is hiring. Would you like, you look like you would fit well in that space. And that's how I entered marketing and stayed there for the longest time. And every 3 years, I'm like, Lord, what am I doing selling lotion? And telling people it will change their lives. This is a lie. So every 3 years, I left and then did something like I have I have volunteered with like KSPCA and animals and MC that like dog events and made dog collars. Like, okay, fine, it's marketing, go back. And then after that, keep going back and forth. I'm pretty sure I had like a quarter life crisis where I felt that everyone knew what it is they were doing. Everyone had this passion and I didn't have fire for anything like that. I had no clue. And I read one of these things that said, if you really want to know what it is you're meant to do, or you're really seeking a purpose, I had this hunger for a purpose. And it said, just think back to your childhood, what you did all the time, what you really enjoyed before you were earning anything from it. It was just something you enjoyed, and ask people who knew you back then. And I asked my parents, my brother, and they all said, oh, remember, you like to do these things with kids. My younger brother is 11 years younger than me. So all his birthdays were these elaborate things with like games. And my mom would give me a budget and I'd go shop House of Leather and whatnot and put all these things together. And she'd say, yeah, remember, you used to do a lot of that stuff. And I thought it was just her attempt to make me have grandchildren for her. Because at that time, I'm not having kids, but here we are. Yeah, but it turns out that's what was meant to happen. So after COVID is when I realized, hold up, I want to go all in and do this, which is crazy considering I just had a child during no, that was before the pandemic. No, the one during the pandemic. Just had a child and I'm supposed to be taking less risks, but it worked out.
Nothing is wasted.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I know that's not true. I was going to say when you know, but I've known many things that have gone wrong before.
But there seems to be like an internal bubbling of, so what did you call it? Socialpreneur?
Yeah, I mean, you can call it.
Or the altruism. There's that need, there's impact that you're looking for.
Yes.
Even with the pets.
Yeah.
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 Let's go way, way back. So Cliff has done the 13 years. I want to go back to, what was your childhood like?
I had an amazing childhood, an amazing upbringing. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, so I guess it shows. And she just naturally, her personality is adventurer. She was that type where you come in through that door and she's up in a tree and you don't even blink twice and you just like move on. She did a lot of pranks on us where neighbors were called and she had to explain why she's covered in like face powder and her kids are crying. And so I like, even now when we meet up, we switch into like play mode instantaneously. Even with our kids there, we had like big children, and I think I had an awesome upbringing.
My goodness, sometimes we really take for granted how the environment that you grow up in, how your parents raise you, it shows up.
It really does influence. Yeah,
a very big portion
of your identity and what you think is possible. I remember also with all these things that we do, I have a brother his thing is football, another one who it's like IT stuff. No one ever knows what specifically they do, but he works with computers and databases and softwares. And then there's me and my mom. When you're interested in something, she's also interested through and through. So I even remember my dad saying, yeah, you can be whatever you want. You can be a carpenter, and people are like, you want to be a carpenter, but you can be the best possible carpenter in that space and do amazing things. So don't worry about that. And maybe my this has also come from their very clear like moral code, and I've not seen them sacrifice who they are for money or anything like that. So I don't worry too much to be at this stage where we are teething and we are trying to figure out and find our footing with Play Academy, because I saw how they did it also in their time.
I have a question, especially around the book Nook.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to some of the stories. They come from all over Africa.
Yeah.
Is that intentional from you in terms of just curating African stories? Because I think, like you're saying, it was oral tradition and you're trying to fix that. What's the vision for the book Nook, and how do you curate your stories, and what are you thinking
So for Book Nook, it came up because one of the things I'd always get back from the audience when I'd say, the importance of, we call them mirror books and window books. So mirror books reflect your reality because there are certain nuances anyone writing stories about you cannot capture. Like
correct.
there's a book that we read called There's Rice at Home that my kids love. And it's this mom walking around with the kids and they see ice cream. Oh, I want ice cream. Can I get it? And she'd reply, there's rice at home. Then they see something else and she'd reply, there's rice at home. And when they get home, they see a tub of ice cream and they open it and it's stew. That cannot be captured by someone who is not living here and living that life.
Oh, and it's so nuanced. All of us know exactly what's happening.
So you're not even shocked.
And Danish cookies.
Do you know there's someone who told me when I shared that book and how we really love, and so many people connect. Oh my God, yes, even my mom used to do this. And even as a grown-up, you feel so, you don't realize that story was missing in your space until you read it. And one of them was like, their child, this is so true for them and for their child. There are just certain generational traumas we are passing along. That's tradition now. It's just, they are like, the child, they go to buy ice cream and the child makes them open the tin in the store to confirm it's that they didn't take the guashe one or the stew one. They got the one with ice cream before they go home because they just know at home that's not it. But those are mirror books. Those are things that are written by our own voices.
Yeah.
No one else can capture such nuances. No one else can make you feel as seen and as when you're reading a book and Njoroge is preparing for his mission to Mars. You know that guy. There's one that is Zuri and Toto. We have someone at the in our community called Zuri. They can't stop reading that book. You can't be what you don't see right in front of you. What is so possible? And for me,
we've suffered cognitive dissonance our whole life.
We don't even know that it's a factor until you connect for someone. When was the first time you realize you hit your hair? Like we all as like begged to be blow dried. Why? Because it was that one time when it connected for you that when you run, it actually doesn't flow in the wind. It's just like this stiff. And you thought it's because something is wrong with it. Not because that's how hair on your head grows, because this is where you're from. So that's why it's really important for me, for them to see themselves, even doing normal things, first day of school for so-and-so. It's like your first day. And then we have the window books where they get a window into other people's realities, other people's cultures, making sure that, the stories you have people in wheelchairs, have people with hijab, have people, with albinism and with... These should not be such shockers to see in the real world. Where are those people invisible? Where are those kids invisible? So my mission was to create access, to remove the excuse of they're not available in the shops. And I went through the thinking of why is this, when they're stocking these things in the bookshops, what is the conversation that happens that you choose the book that is there? That means there are no conversations that are happening. Now, trying to move the needle by trying to change the entire ecosystem. For example, the people who publish for our textbooks, they have strict rules on how those kids appear. They must be in a skirt. Their hair needs to be like this, and they need to be called this. And like they are very, very specific. Is it Zayne at my capacity who's going to make them change that when your goal is to make money? But I can't wait until the entire system is and then we start overhauling. So Book Nook is one of the ways I do that. I create access in the simplest way. In fact, I tell you, on the ride to school, play it in the car. Like at bedtime while they're bathing, play. You don't have to do anything but hit play. That's it. Just reducing the distance between that and you enjoy that. Get our book subscription. I will curate books specifically for your kids, and you receive 2 books to your doorstep. Like just making it as simple as come for the free bookish play date. I want those kids, the books I'm sharing on my page that my kids are fortunate to have access to. I want to eventually have a library. I want to have something that other kids can. They are no use just being ours in our home. So these bookish play dates are meant to create, once that child comes into an environment where that is the norm. Our Kenyan authors have an entire side just for their stuff. They bring dolls of kids that look like them. That one is free. Next, just I'll do book reviews and tell you where to buy this book and whatnot. So that's not something you need to think about. So Book Nook, the goal is to have all these stories collected. Right now, we are focusing very heavily on African stories, but we'll expand.
Yeah.
We'll try and
I
incorporate
had some amazing
other
stories. Shaka
stories
Zulu.
as well.
I don't know.
Exactly.
I was like listening to stories from West Africa.
And there's also this perception that my child will not enjoy it. Why? Because we have to unlearn something where books were read for studying. If you ask a lot of people our age, the books from their childhood, they're set books.
That's true.
They are Peter and Jane. That was for early reading. It was not for enjoyment per se. And we want to change that perception. For me, the goal, the first 6 years of life, is to create just joyful moments around reading and books. The rest will come once they've come to the bookish play date, and there were books everywhere, and there was a dinosaur sensory bin and a dinosaur next to it, and there was this storytelling show that was so fun and everyone was in it. That becomes a core memory for them around reading. And so even for the stories, I tell parents, if they really enjoy the podcast, when we are recording, they can come and see how it's recorded, and they can speak into the mic. And and the goal for Book Nook eventually, because we collaborate heavily with like Kenyan authors, which a lot of them are female authors, for
on the WhatsApp
kids
group.
book. In the WhatsApp group. For kids books. And we've discussed things like workshops where we come and we just churn out books and write books. For example, Book Dash, who do that, where they have 48 hours and they create teams where you're the author, you're the illustrator and an editor, and you're given 48 hours start to finish. That's what we want to do. We want, as flooded the market is with other stories, that's where we should be.
It's wild
with ours.
Yeah, that we've grown up with stories like Rapunzel and
no, it's quite
Cinderella,
and
Snow
even
White, and
like the African
wild.
kid in the story is the mischievous one. Is the
always the
that's just the norm. That's what we know to be the case.
And you grow up and not realizing how,
and you don't even know how it impacts you. Even there are people right now who don't know. It's just a story, it's just a fairy tale, but those kids form everything. With
the
their
danger
identity.
of a single story, Chimamanda.
Yes.
And I grew up reading Enid Blyton. And there was always meadows and snow.
Like meadows and snow.
Yani you're in this world that you can't even relate to.
Like snow, anybody sees
it's so
snow.
crazy. When you're talking about Book Nook, there's this statistic I read that children who are read to at least 3 times a week show significantly better language skills and cognitive development. A study found that children exposed to reading have heard 1.4 million more words by the time they enter kindergarten compared to those who are not read too frequently. And then the frequency of reading. I like how you're saying, some parents, we didn't grow up having bedtime stories with mom and daddy. But so it's very hard for parents to also translate that, because a lot of times parenting is also reparenting your inner child. And so the frequency of reading, around 55% of parents in the US, and I want there to be an Africa statistic, report reading to their children between ages 0 to 5 every day. Children have better safety. They understand safety and security, and they feel more loved than the parents whose children were not read to.
And for me, it's also important that we are not eliminating the oral storytelling as well. The same benefits they're getting from books, they can get from you. Like if I don't get a chance to read to my kids as they're taking a bath, I'll tell them, now let me tell you a story about so and so. That's what they want. Because what are you doing? You're creating that bonding and connection. They're hearing new vocabulary just from you talking. So books are fantastic, and even those statistics of the states or whatever, they don't account for that. For parents here telling kids,
Yeah.
you know. Or also my goal of getting books on the shelves is just to balance out, you know, what is already there. But yeah, reading is just so transformative, even with the older kids. Like for me, reading also helps me in my parenting, where there's something that my child is struggling with. I don't know how to spark that conversation. I don't know how to, like, what I'm supposed to do. Someone wrote a book about it. We have a book about a wobbly tooth when he was removing his tooth. We have one on, you know, right now it's like where a baby is coming from, and we're like easing into anatomy books and things like that. There is a book for the first day of school, because they want to see, again, they're saying, oh, so not everyone is like excited about it. You can be anxious, you can be sad about it. There's a book about someone welcoming a new sibling. Their books are tools. They even for stress relief and like relaxation and everything for that child that's there. And we don't need to stress over them. You know, I'm not reading to them because all they do is eat the book. Yeah, they're 6 months. That's them engaging with the book, you know. So also making sure we manage our expectations and not feel constrained. Because I actually did a video on that study, which was say 1.4 million words and kids who are never read to. And it was like, by this age, and you have to read 5 books a day. You've overwhelmed me already. You've told me there's a time limit. And you find parents withdrawing from it. They're just not readers. That's not what it is. Yeah.
But that's up here. For Book Nook, are you envisioning where, especially I'm big on like democratization of
I knew you were gonna say that word in this conversation.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm like, knowledge should be democratized, and whatever is happening up here for the privileged should also trickle down to society as well. So in terms of language distribution as well, is there something that you're thinking around, especially the Nook, so that the same experiences the privileged are also getting? Then how does that translate?
For me,
to the
like
rural
I say,
kids to.
For we always say, in everything we do, wherever in our policies are these children, there's a capital all children. To always remember, it is not for the ones who can afford. A slide is not for the one with legs only, and so on and so forth. 100%. This is my little way of trying to get
throwing your heart in the ring.
I just want to be like these stories. You remember how in story time, okay, my age is about sure. So they'd play, national radio had stories that they could play in classrooms. This can happen with the Book Nook. Like, it's something that anybody at this point can access. Do I have the capacity to reach everyone right now to even boost, put an ad on? I do not. But that is the goal ultimately. Even these experiences that we're doing, that's why we started with the National Library, something that's already accessible, and also making sure people know where the library is, what can you do. And for me, it's also a lot of collaborations. There are people already doing those grassroots activities. I truly believe in not reinventing the wheel. You're not starting from scratch. Someone is already doing it, and then you plug into what it is they are doing. So that's the goal. That's how we intend to like spread.
And one day in Africa.
Yes, that's a point. In fact, when I was registering Play Academy, I specifically was like, no, Africa. Even though I had no clue at a Nairobi Nenda, I was like Africa wide. And interestingly, we've gotten like interest with people who are part of our community and who own like schools and stuff in Nigeria, in TZ, wanting to collaborate. So we just need to be able to actually travel with all my various tidbits and furnitures and create opportunities in those spaces as well. But that is 100% the goal.
Yeah, I think you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
And which is incredible. So I guess for everyone, just check out Playroom KE. I'm excited to see what will this will continue to become. How long have you been?
Me too. I'm also excited to see what will happen.
I'm just like you're onto something because it's a real.
So Play Academy is a year old.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and Playroom where I was doing just the content is 3 years.
That's amazing though. So the content has turned into sort of a business now. And
So
that's amazing. So I think we will be looking forward to seeing you here more often, just to catch up in terms of how the stories are, how your entrepreneurship journey is shaping out, how you're growing. So I can't wait for that as well. And this has been cool.
It has been. I love that we get to spotlight people with your journey, on your journey, because a lot of times entrepreneurship is very capitalist.
Yeah.
And there's no room for people who are just looking to impact the world based off what they see from their view of the world. And for me, I really dislike that the children around me, when you ask them who your superhero is or who Luanda Magere is, they're like, not me, I don't know who they are, but they know about Spider-Man and Superman, what happened to our stories. And I feel like that's how identity is built back into the child, where because you become what you see, you're already forming an identity for this child. Those a podcast I was listening to, where one lady said that by age 3, your child has already decided has come up with their attachment style, and also that definitely impacts who they choose as their partner in life. But no one is paying attention in 0 to 3. But that's where a lot is formed.
Yeah.
I know we're almost out of time, but I remember there was a conversation that we had where in certain communities in Kenya, women aren't allowed to give birth and just be. You know, in Nairobi context, a woman gives birth and goes to her apartment and then figures it out herself. But in communities, you find that women weren't allowed to do anything for 40 days, and she's taken care of and loved on. And that also directly impacts the child, because now we're looking at 0 to 3,
Yeah.
3 to 4 to 5, and 5 to 6, or
Yeah.
5 to 8. And so what I love is that you're deciding to make a mark. You're leaving your mark, and your legacy is already starting to form. And you're planting seeds in gardens that you probably will get to see the fruit when you're 65. There'll be somebody like, Zayne, I didn't play a role, and you changed my life, and now,
Hopefully I'm not Play Academy. Like it can't be Zayne only.
Yeah, absolutely.
My goal is it has a life of its own. But yeah.
I want to say thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is very important. It's so important, and I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And for having me. I'm a huge fan, as you know.
Yes.
Like I at this point, I listened to the podcast with I told you, I don't think I've listened to one episode where I've not gone, oh my God, that is, and just thrown it into conversation. Did you know that there's a few conversations I've had where someone is like, my God, your business acumen. But really, it was like little nuggets that I've picked up from here. That's my little secret.
That's amazing. And we're also looking to sort of build that as well.
Yeah.
Even for us as well, the learning has been immense, just meeting people and building community. It seems like we're all going back to community, because you will never grow without community. And that was our essence.
And sharing that info, because going through this journey, everyone learns something, has a very different thing that they can share, and all of us build up on it, because some of the stuff that I've learned is not a mistake I personally have to make. But it's something that I've learned from someone else. Even in my work, there are a lot of innovations where I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about it that way. Because I told someone, I want to eventually have this orphanage for all these kids, and ours, it won't be about bare minimum. Like, you have a bed, they will have the best of the best. They'll have the best programs, the best education. And they told me, have you ever thought that a lot of the kids who are considered orphans actually have family? They might not have parents, but they have uncles, aunties, and other communities. And that it might not be in their best interest for you to remove them from that to do this. Why not create a hub that empowers these families, makes sure they have the right resources, information, knowledge, and support to be able to take care of these kids and whatnot. So I really like podcasts like this that create opportunities to learn from people we probably haven't met yet.
Absolutely. So thank you.
Thank you so
are
much.
Done. And so to our community, to enjoy more of this content, please subscribe. Just join us, help us grow our community. And that's it from me. Over and out. Wago.
What are your social media handles?
Plug
yourself.
So at playroom.ke, that's me. And then at playacademy.africa is our little community hub.
Love it.
Yeah.
And it's a wrap.